6 years ago, I moved house, and I assessed my costs when I did it. Like anyone who doesn't work for the government does. You look at what's coming in, you look at what you're spending, and you take the opportunity to address the difference in those. Well, one of the things I identified was the BBC. The quality of TV coverage had fallen. The quality of their news become much less independent. Let's face it, people online were telling you the things that the BBC wouldn't tell you. Well, there's been an exponential change in this during those 6 years. What I saw in terms of Brexit coverage, Trump's election coverage, the Russia hoax, and a dozen other topics was that the BBC is no longer an independent government funded broadcaster. The BBC is what it's often always been, a sectarian left wing broadcaster. Now, the media often leans a bit to the left. People who want to study politics at university, or people who teach those students, or people who want to study journalism, they often want to change the world, or they want to save the world. Those sort of people tend to over-index on being on the left of politics. So it's not unnatural that any media company leans a little bit left. The problem is the complete lack of awareness by the BBC. The BBC has a pomposity about its independence, yet time and time again it is clearly not independent. It's like the newspaper. It's not independent. It's a left-wing perspective on the world. You don't read The Independent because it's independent. You read it because they think like you. Well, I'm sure a lot of people at the BBC read The Independent. The BBC's quality of output was already dropping. I could see that I would be lectured, that people who said the wrong thing wouldn't appear on Question Time again, that Question Time was becoming so boring and full of plants that really the only thing you could guarantee would that you'd have some Corbynite activist on there, not that you'd have actual general public asking political questions. And really, the quality of coverage dropped so much, I found myself not really watching it. When they made cutbacks in the international reporting, and you'd end up with someone speaking pidgin English describing something that happened in Kenya. Well, that's great, but if I wanted to have Kenyan English, I'd watch Kenyan TV. I want an independent global perspective, the way that to some degree you get with France 24, Deutsche Welle, or WION from India. Well, having dropped the BBC, the first thing is I've saved myself a lot of money. The second thing is I've saved myself from watching a lot of dross. The third thing is I've diversified the perspectives I absorb. So instead of watching half an hour of tripe from the BBC, I get perspectives from countries around the world and from across the political spectrum. Really, getting rid of the BBC has been an investment for me. Yet, you still get the knock at the door. When I registered that I wasn't going to be having BBC anymore, I went and filled out the form. And I made it clear that I was fully complying with the law and I would not be requiring a licence. Now, when I did that, I did it before I moved into the property, so I actually put slightly wrong address because the estate agent had given me the wrong address. Very slightly, very subtly. Well, guess what? I start getting letters to that address saying that they notice I don't have a TV licence. So, having been informed that I don't need one, they then added that to the database and started sending to it. Now, I've actually had them knock on the door, and I invited them in and I showed them. Because I have nothing to hide, I am 100% compliant with the law. I do not watch live television. I do not watch the BBC. I do not in any way violate that. But I know that I'll still get hassled because this is a tax. But it's a tax enforced not by the Inland Revenue, but by bully boys, by lies in letters, by misleading advertising campaigns. I think we all know that the TV reception tracker doesn't exist, never has, and never will. And maybe ask a physics teacher why it doesn't work, because it's clearly made up. The BBC wastes hundreds of millions of pounds a year. And it's always scared that it will run out of money, that it won't get the funding, because people don't watch it anymore. Now, instead of asking the question that a commercial company would ask, nobody's watching us anymore, what are we doing wrong, how do we need to pivot? Instead, they double down and they pompously say, oh, Nigel Farage, if he wins the election, we need to be protected from him. He'll destroy the wonderful BBC. Oh, we should start charging people who watch Netflix, because people who watch a box set on Netflix are aggressively attacking the BBC so that it won't have funding. They're choosing, what a horrible right-wing thing to do, to choose to watch television which isn't made by the wonderful BBC. Well, it's time that the funding model was looked at. And it's time that we asked, can the BBC stand on its own? Because anyone who's been on holiday and looked at the BBC realises that the BBC has no problem with advertising. It views advertising as a top-up to its revenue. What it has a problem with is competing in an even, open market with broadcasters that produce quality content and a news service that people actually want to watch. Why are we paying for that? Really, it's time the BBC sorted out their house or had their funding substantially remodelled. And frankly, it's disgraceful that the Conservatives didn't do it. Labour won't do it because they're on the same page as the BBC. The only difference is that some of the BBC are a bit further to the left. So after 6 years, my only regret is that I can't watch certain sporting events because they're live. Since the BBC isn't a sports-only broadcaster, that's a pretty failed model on their part. So I would urge you, follow me. Get rid of the BBC. Stop watching their tripe. Stop paying for their propaganda and their pious nonsense. The only downside is you might need to drop Sky, ITV, Channel 4 and everyone else who actually has content you might want to watch. But that's the price of not watching the BBC. You can't watch anyone else either. Just as a side note, if you watch this to the end, why don't you like and subscribe? and particularly subscribe, because it does help us. About 95% of our viewers don't subscribe. And it doesn't cost you a penny, unlike the BBC.